I knew you guys were for real in fighting against the establishment when I started going on right-wing shows and I would say something negative about Mitch McConnell. And when I did that in the past, what I would get back is, oh, no, Mitch McConnell's great. Pelosi's terrible, but Mitch McConnell's great.
Let's do that here. What do you guys think of Mitch McConnell?
All right. Yes, I love that. So look, for my left-wing friends that are watching out there, they just booed Mitch McConnell. That's a great thing, okay? And let's do one more. What do you guys think about Dick Cheney? My left-wing friends out there, we have been waiting for the right-wing populists to boo Mitch McConnell and Dick Cheney our whole lives. Take the win. Take the win.
I'm joined now by founder of TYT and host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur. Cenk, thank you so much for joining. That was a clip of you at an unlikely event this past weekend.
In this interview, Cenk Uygur takes on Brian Tyler Cohen, and let me tell you, things get really interesting. Cenk, who's usually trashing anything MAGA related, is out here defending the very people he has spent years criticizing. He is talking about a revolt against the establishment in the Republican Party, and even giving props to Trump supporters. Yeah, you heard that right. So what's really going on here? Are we witnessing a left-wing shift, or just some classic Cenk Uygur flip-flopping? Let's break it down and see if Cenk really means what he is saying.
But I wanted to talk about this event in particular because you've taken a lot of heat for going in the first place, and I want to push back against that right off the bat, because I do think if this election has shown us anything, is that Democrats do have to be willing to go into spaces that are more hostile to Democrats. Inherently, if we're going to look at expanding our coalition, expanding our tent, we have to go outside of that tent to be able to do that. So I disagree with people who think that you shouldn't be going there. I think we should be going into the most dangerous territory that we could. That's the only way that we're going to be able to really send our message the farthest. But I do take issue with one thing there. You said in that clip, I knew you guys were for real about fighting the establishment, and you give a bunch of a list of reasons, but you said it to a room full of people who voted for a billionaire in Donald Trump and who was funded by the literal richest guy in the world, in Elon Musk. So I understand and appreciate your argument that Kamala Harris and the Democrats are too establishment. That's a drum that you've beaten for years now, but isn't it insane to think that this Republican Party, this MAGA Republican Party, is the answer? Like there are more billionaires in Trump's cabinet than the buffet line at Davos.
Yeah. So let's take both of those real quick. So number one, I'm going to talk to folks. There's a talking point that we have on the left that we don't realize is absurd, but it is totally absurd. They say, well, if you go talk to them, it legitimizes them. You know what legitimizes them? Winning the election.
Right. I mean, that ship has sailed, right? Like when people say don't go on Fox, as if millions of as if we're the reason that Fox is suddenly going to be legitimized because on a network that millions of people watch on a daily basis.
Of course. And so and they even won the popular vote. But the fact that they won the popular vote is very relevant because we have to win those voters back. And you can't win those voters back if you're not talking to them. So that's point one. Now, on in terms of the establishment, this one is a complicated and really interesting topic. So both sides claim that the other side is bad and their donors suck, but our donors are great. And I always find that conversation intensely absurd, right? So if you say to me the donors on both sides are bad, meaning like not that they're bad people, but that it's bad that this system allows for those kind of donations, which then obviously influence both sides. I say absolutely, 100%. So, but that means you've got to be honest about your own side. So you, as you pointed out, I've been saying this for about 20 years now. And so that's why I'm in the Bernie Sanders wing. And I think when Kamala Harris was bragging about how she had 90 corporate CEOs on her side, that was a terrible strategy. And when, she raised over $1 billion for herself, let alone the billions in the PACs, largely a huge portion of that was corporate donors.
Okay, so Cenk, the guy who's been railing against the right for years, suddenly calls for honesty on his own side. Well, that's a curveball. And look, I get it. Both sides have their issues. But let's be real. When's the last time the left actually came clean about their own billionaire donors? We're talking about people like George Soros and corporate CEOs who bankroll their campaigns. It's easy to point fingers at Trump and Musk, but when will the left admit that they've got their own problems? Classic Cenk trying to have it both ways.
If you think that they don't have to pay them back with favors, you're just not paying attention. I love you, brothers and sisters, but this is the same exact thing I say to the right wing. So when I go there and I say, one thing they did that we didn't do yet is they did a revolt against their establishment wing within the party. So they, basically kicked out Mitch McConnell from power, etc. We have not done likewise. We have not kicked out the Nancy Pelosi's and the Joe Bidens. And so when you go to do that, there's massive pushback, okay? No way, those are our leaders, and the other side is so evil. We have to take the money, we have to bow our heads to these leaders, and we have to let them serve the donors. No, I don't agree, right? But now when you turn to the right wing, I said later in that speech, I said, guys, don't lower your guard because you have donors too. And then there was a little bit of a hush over the crowd, right? Because when you start talking about Republican donors, who pops to mind first? Elon Musk. And so I'm honest about it in both directions, and I say it to their face. And so I've gone on other right-wing shows and said, who's Elon, what's Elon Musk? He's a donor. He's the largest donor, over $250 million that he gave to Donald Trump. And now all of a sudden he wants regulatory agencies that regulate his companies to be wiped away from existence.
Right.
That's awfully convenient, right? And then who's his donor, third largest donor? Miriam Adelson, $137 million. If you take the Adelson family, Sheldon and Miriam, Sheldon's passed away, but before he did, they've given over $330 million to Donald Trump, even larger than Elon Musk. And in my opinion, he's handed them foreign policy. So these are the points I make to right-wingers, and who else is even getting in the room to make those points to tell not their leaders, but their voters, guys, remember, you're supposed to hate corruption. That's what you say 24/7. If you do, be careful about Elon Musk, Miriam Adelson, and every other donor that Trump has.
Cenk's making a big point here, claiming that Trump's donors like Elon Musk and Miriam Adelson have essentially been handed the keys to foreign policy. But here's the thing, Cenk is right about one thing. Corruption is a big issue, and both sides have their fair share of billionaire backers pulling strings. But let's not pretend that the left is any less guilty when it comes to donor influence. We've got George Soros, tech giants, and corporate CEOs backing their campaigns too. It's a dirty game on both sides. But Cenk's trying to stir the pot here, telling right-wingers to be wary of the same thing they've been calling out for years: big money in politics. And honestly, it's a fair warning. The problem is not just the donors, it is the system that lets them control so much. But I'll tell you this, if you think Trump's donors are the problem, just wait until you look at the money trail behind the Democrats. It's all smoke and mirrors, folks, and Cenk knows it. He's just hoping the right will take the bait.
Well, I think that's where the point of contention is, because you saying this stuff is you operating in good faith. These people don't care. Like, there are no long-standing principles that they abide by. This is the purported party of family values, the purported party of the Constitution, of law and order, of states' rights, of fiscal responsibility. They will throw that shit out the window the moment, the millisecond it becomes inconvenient for them, and that's what they did. But you're saying these things to people as if they're operating under some principle that they should be against the establishment, that they should be against these donors, when they're not. The only longstanding principle is their allegiance to Trump. And so my worry is that, like, you trying to get through to them on these issues of principle is falling flat, because it's not principle that got them there in the first place. There is no longstanding principle when you are a Trump supporter.
Yeah. So, Brian, this is an interesting. I think this is probably the most interesting point of the conversation, because I think you're right and you're wrong. So the right part is what you're laying out the history of, and that is correct. That's what I've said, that's what you've said, and we've been accurate about that, right? So did Donald Trump do anything actually populist in his first term? No. He even forgot about the wall until 6 months were left, and right, I got to run on the wall, right. So I'll pretend to build like 3 feet of it, right? And all he did was giant corporate tax cuts, which is literally the least populist thing you could do. Right. And I say that all the time, again, on right-wing shows. I talk to them about Jav Yas, how Trump wanted to ban TikTok. Yas gives him a couple $1 million. All of a sudden, he likes TikTok. Same thing on electric vehicles and Elon. And again, whenever I make those points, even the host like nod along, like it's uncomfortably true, right?
Yeah.
So now, so on family values, another point where you're absolutely right. Enormous hypocrisy, like record-breaking hypocrisy for my entire life. Family values for you, but not for me. But I'll vote for the guy with the porn star mistress, et cetera, right? So we're all clear on that, and there's nothing wrong with anything we've ever said on that. We've been 100% right. Okay, now where's the part where I think you're wrong? And this is the part where people, I think I'm a little ahead of people, and people think I'm being naive. So what I'm sensing, Brian, is from their audiences, and I'm not just sensing it like through intuition. They're literally doing polls while I'm on their shows. We're doing interactions, calls. When I went to AmFest, talked to literally hundreds of guys who are MAGA, as you know, they came up to talk to me, etc. And this is not the same base as Trump 2016. So that doesn't mean that they're angels. It doesn't mean that everyone on that side all of a sudden changed their mind. Will you find the immovable part of the Trump base as we had before? Absolutely, right? Will you still find some evangelical Christians? Yes, but they have greatly dwindled, both in size and power. So that family values stuff went out the door, partly because they were hypocrites, but partly because the evangelical Christians aren't in charge anymore of MAGA. So the rest of MAGA are kind of bros and stuff, and they don't really care about family values at all. In fact, a lot of the bros are pro-choice. So like when you say that some people on the right or agree with us on things like pro-choice or anti-corruption, the pushback I get from the left is no way, they're all evil, they're all a monolith, they're all this, they're all that. No, guys, that's unsophisticated. 77 million people are not all the same thing.
Right.
And remember, we don't have to win or care that much about the outer edge of MAGA on the right. You're never going to win those guys over, and that's not the issue. You've got to win over people on the inner edge that voted for Obama, that voted for Biden, and now have voted for Trump. And those folks are not radicals. Those folks need to be won over. And they are different than what the base was before. And so what I'm sensing is on anti-war and anti-corruption, they really do mean it.
So what's the real deal here? Cenk Uygur, the guy who's been one of the loudest voices criticizing MAGA and Trump supporters, is now out here defending them and calling for honesty about the corruption in both parties. Is this a sign that Cenk's starting to see the flaws within the Democratic Party, or is he just trying to appear more balanced while maintaining his position in the left-wing camp? Either way, this interview sheds light on the complexities of modern politics. Both sides have their issues, but the people are the ones who seem to get left behind in the chaos. It is definitely an interesting move for Cenk to back MAGA in any capacity, and it raises some serious questions about where he stands on some of the biggest issues of our time. But one thing's for sure, this interview is far from over, and there's a lot more to unpack about what Cenk really thinks about the Republican establishment, the left's failures, and the future of American politics. What do you think? Is Cenk onto something, or is he just trying to ride the wave of controversy? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more bold and unapologetic content.